The Dallas Cowboys made waves on night one of the NFL Draft, selecting Oklahoma wide receiver CeeDee Lamb with the 17th overall pick. Now, CeeDee Lamb was projected as the 6th best player on Pro Football Focus's draft board, so the fact that he even slid to 17 is quite remarkable in itself. There were many people basically saying before the draft that CeeDee Lamb and Jeudy were the 2 best wide receivers in the draft, and it could really go either way on who would go first. Instead, it was Ruggs going to Oakland, and we know Oakland loves speed, so I think they were enamored with the 4.2 speed from Ruggs, and that's fitting anyway because we saw that in the past with Darius Hayward-Bay. So nothing too shocking there in terms of why they would make that decision. It was still a little bit surprising, but all the same, that left things open for the Cowboys to eventually snag CeeDee Lamb or Jeudy at 17. Now, receiver was a need for the Cowboys coming into the draft, but it was by no means their biggest need. I think this took a perfect storm because if it had been Ruggs sitting there, I don't think Dallas takes him at 17. I think they would have gone instead with defensive end and gotten a little bit of help there. But instead, when it came down to Jeudy or Lamb and then Denver took Jeudy, I think it made it impossible for Dallas to pass. Jerry Jones himself said that they received 3 substantial offers for the 17th overall pick, and to whatever degree you think Jerry Jones looked at this and basically said, I'm not gonna let another Randy Moss situation happen. It is what it is. The talent was too good to pass on for Oklahoma. For the Cowboys, he was the best player left on the board. He was a top 6 player on the Cowboys draft board, as I said earlier, on Pro Football Focus's draft board. And the Cowboys had basically didn't even do a whole lot of homework on him in terms of interviews or anything like that in the lead up to the draft because they assumed there was no way he would still be available for them to take at 17. But surprise, surprise, he was. And unlike years past where they would have picked more for need and say, well, this guy is hardly the best player available, but we want to make sure we don't miss out on what we need here, we're going to go ahead and take that even though he's not the best player. Tristan Hill, a very notable example, Taco Charlton, I could go on. And because of this, the Cowboys have routinely taken players earlier than they should be taken. And so here, flipping back to just conventional wisdom of, hey, who's the best player available on the board? We'll figure it out later. CeeDee Lamb is a potential perennial Pro Bowl talent, not somebody you let slip by you in this case. If you don't take him, Philadelphia is definitely going to take him. So Dallas, I think, is smart here, taking CeeDee Lamb. He now becomes your 3rd wide receiver, easily replaces, maybe not immediately, but in terms of ceiling for sure, replaces the production of Randall Cobb, who went to Houston. And now Dallas is going to have a lethal receiving core with Amari Cooper locked down on a 5-year, $100 million deal, with Michael Gallup entering year 3 and already coming off a 1,000-yard season, a big season in year number 2 for him. And now with CeeDee Lamb, who he played about 70% of his snaps on the outside at Oklahoma last year, but he did play 30% inside in the slot where he will be for Dallas here. And even in that situation, he scored 7 touchdowns outside, 7 touchdowns inside. Very well balanced production from CeeDee Lamb here. And this is what Dallas needs. I think he can play obviously both. They're going to run him inside for now. You could say, hey, long term, what does this mean? You know, you already paid Amari Cooper. You've already paid a lot of primo talent on your team. Could you even conceivably extend an offer to Michael Gallup in 2 years when he then hits free agency? Debatable. But if you got one guy to keep purely on a talent level, you're probably looking at CeeDee Lamb in that case. Well, look at that. The Dallas Cowboys continue after a strong first round, getting cornerback Diggs, the younger brother of Trevon Diggs, now of the Buffalo Bills. They get Diggs out of Alabama. This is a fantastic pickup for the Cowboys. Very polished defensive back, can play the ball very well, good hands, and while he doesn't have anything like tremendous elite value in any one skill set, very well-rounded. I think you can put him on the outside and think of him as a corner 2 or 3 and feel pretty comfortable and content with him. And I think he'll produce some turnovers for you as well, which Dallas's secondary desperately needs here. But in general, the fact that Dallas tried to move up several times in the second round from pick 51 to ensure that they could get Diggs, it didn't look like they were going to, because they failed again and again and again, and Bleacher Report gave them a 1% chance of getting Diggs when they could not move up. And yet, look what happens. The perfect storm once again. Dallas lands another fantastic value player here. Just like CeeDee Lamb was the 6th overall player on the draft board according to Pro Football Focus, you have Diggs at the 31st overall player in the draft, and you get him at pick 51. Fantastic value there. I love what the Cowboys are doing. This is a very good trend now. Now you are filling a major need, obviously, with Byron Jones going to Miami. You're filling a major need here with the defense, and if you can continue building on that, then you'll have a long way you can go. Take the trend further, keep going defense, and we'll see what we can build out. Well, look at that, round 3. You might as well start calling them the Dallas Sooners, because Jerry Jones goes back to the Oklahoma well, and this time he selects Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle out of Oklahoma, with pick number 82. Again, this just on the basis of where these guys are rated on the draft board, according to Pro Football Focus and other sources, this is another high value pick. At pick 82, you get the 51st player on the board. That is impressive. That said, there are some things that give me a little bit of pause with Gallimore. Obviously, his background's unique. He came from Canada before he came to Oklahoma to play in Norman. And while he has some great traits, his pass rushing ability is good. He's got great motor and work ethic. There are some areas where he needs to improve. He's a 3 tech. He needs to improve, however, with regard to his run defense. His press could use a little bit of work. It's not a perfect fit. I'm not going to go completely to the extent of what I initially felt about the pick and say, well, he kind of reminds me of Charles Tapper out of Oklahoma back in 2016, and by 2018, Tapper had pretty much already flamed out of the league. He doesn't have the birth defect in terms of his lower back, so that's good. He doesn't have a ticking time bomb of a lower back issue there, and I think he's got better work ethic, whereas Charles Tapper pretty much was forced to keep with football by his family because they knew that's where his future laid. Moving on. Because they knew that's where his future was, they instead have someone now with a much higher motor and better work ethic. There are definite areas he needs to improve. I think he's a better pick here. He definitely shores up that interior defensive line a little bit. Now you put him with Gerald McCoy, another Sooner. Granted, he's 32. You put him with Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe, and you got some nice value here forming in the middle of that defense. Good mentorship as well, I think, for Gallimore. I like the pick. Gallimore's stock went up considerably in the combine, and I want to see what he's able to do now within this defense. I got a better feeling about him than I did about Charles Tapper a few years ago, but it's going to be interesting to see how he can develop, and if he can be a guy who, he's not going to be a guy that gets you 60 snaps a game. I don't think that's going to be in his repertoire, but if he's a guy that gives you 30 snaps a game, approximately half, I think he can be quite valuable on your defensive line within your rotation. So I like the pick. I know I didn't really assess a grade on the Diggs pick. I'll say it now, I give it an A- for the Diggs pick in the last video. This one I'm going to say B+. I feel pretty good about it. It's not knocking, it's not blowing me away or anything like that, but I think it's a good value pick and a guy that you can certainly do a lot with. So Jerry Jones does know that he can take players not from the state of Oklahoma, right? The Cowboys here with their 4th round pick select Tulsa cornerback Reggie Robinson. He's a very raw talent, but good size, good hands, and you gotta refine him. I think he went earlier than he probably should have. And looking around at some of the draft experts, Matt Miller, for instance, they tend to agree he's probably a guy that should have gone around the 5th or 6th round. But for what you think you could process him and develop him into, the size and speed and things of that nature, 4.44 speed, that's good. That's good. I get why you make this pick. It's not necessarily the best immediate high value pick you could bring in despite addressing another position of need with cornerback again. But I'm encouraged. I want to see them expand their horizons a little bit. We don't need any other players from Oklahoma right now. Let's take a look at some of those other prospects you need. I'd still like to see them address the pass rush a little bit, but I'm not sure. I'm a little surprised, admittedly, they didn't go for a center here, because obviously with Travis Frederick retiring surprisingly at the start of this offseason, there was a lot of speculation the Cowboys could look there, and now here we are through 4 rounds. They've not done that. I'm very curious to see what they end up doing. It looks like Connor McGovern is basically going to pencil in now as your starting center with, I guess, Joe Looney as your backup, your swing, not tackle in this case, but guard slash center. You know, we'll take a look at what they're doing, but it's very interesting to see how they're handling this draft. I do like that after the explosive pick of CeeDee Lamb, they've gone defense, defense, defense. I think they need to continue that trend and pretty much round out the draft going all defense, because frankly, the offense, even though it sputtered down the stretch last season, you've now addressed that in the biggest way you could possibly have addressed that. And now your goal is to focus on the defense, which has significantly more holes, and the Achilles heel, the kryptonite, whatever you want to call it, that kept Dallas from being a playoff team last year was the defense. So keep your focus there. You also lost a hell of a lot of talent there. Say what you will about guys like Jeff Heath. Say what you will about, Byron Jones not creating turnovers. It is what it is. They had a defense that underperformed and now has several holes it has to fill, but I like that they are paying attention to that, and I think they're generally doing a very good job. So overall, I think the Cowboys thus far through 4 rounds might be putting together the best, or one of the best. I really like what Denver's doing actually, but one of the best 3, let's say, performances as a team in this draft. So I'll keep you updated. Stay tuned.